The rain fell softly on the old shelter as stepped out of the transport vehicle. She looked up at the gray building in front of her. It was not beautiful. The walls were cracked and the paint was old. But this was where the veterans lived, the ones who survived the war that everyone wanted to forget. Ho walked beside her, carrying the recording equipment in a large bag. He was younger than by 5 years, but he was smart and careful. He had studied the language for many years. Today, he would help her speak to creatures that most humans never met. There were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and black, like deep pools of water at night. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years before humans came, and when humans came, everything changed. Was making a documentary about the war, not the battles or the politics. She wanted to know what the soldiers felt, what they remembered, what they still dreamed about when they closed their eyes. The door of the shelter opened, and a young worker greeted them. His name was difficult to say, so he told them to call him. He was polite but nervous. He kept looking at like she might suddenly attack him. "Most of the veterans will not speak to you," said as he led them down a long hallway. "They do not like to remember those times, and they especially do not like to talk about your kind." Nodded. She had expected this. The war had ended 40 years ago, but fear lasted longer than any treaty. "Is there anyone who might be willing?" Ho asked. Stopped walking, he thought for a moment. "There is one. He is very old now. He was a commander during the war. He lost many soldiers." Paused. "He lost many friends." "Will he speak to us?" asked. "He says the young ones need to understand. He says that is why peace matters, because they do not know what war really means." Started walking again. "But I warn you, his stories are not pleasant. They give me bad dreams, and I was born after the war ended." They found in a small room at the end of the building. He sat in a chair by the window looking out at the rain. He was old, even by standards. His gray skin had turned almost white with age. 2 of his 4 arms did not move anymore, but his eyes were still sharp, still aware, still haunted. "So you are the human journalist," said without turning around. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "Come to hear an old soldier talk about the worst days of his life." Sat down across from him. Ho set up the recording equipment quietly. "I want to understand," said simply. "I want others to understand too, not just the facts but what it felt like, what the war did to the people who fought it." Finally turned to look at her. For a long moment he just stared, did not look away. She had learned that they respected those who did not show fear. "You are brave," said, "or maybe foolish. Sometimes those things look the same." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Very well, I will tell you, but you must promise me something." "What is that?" "You must tell the truth, all of it, not just the parts that make your people look good, not just the parts that make my people look bad, the whole truth, the ugly truth." His black eyes seemed to look right through her. "Can you promise that?" "I promise," said. Nodded slowly, then he turned back to the window. "I was young when the war started, younger than you are now. I was proud, I was confident, I believed everything my commanders told me about humans." He paused. "They told us you were weak. They said your bodies were soft and broke easily. They said you were primitive, barely able to travel between stars. They said the war would be over in one cycle." "They were wrong," Ho said quietly. "They were fools," replied, "and I was a fool for believing them." He was silent for a while. The rain kept falling outside. Somewhere in the shelter could hear other veterans talking in low voices. "My first deployment was to the Rim sector," continued. "A group of planets at the edge of human space. We were told to secure the area. We were told there might be some human settlers, but they would run when they saw us." His hands, the ones that still worked, gripped the arms of his chair. "We landed on a planet called Meridian 7, beautiful place, covered in forests, green everywhere." "What happened there?" asked. Did not answer right away. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more afraid. We thought we were hunters. We had better weapons, better armor, better ships. We had been soldiers for generations. Humans had only been in space for a few hundred years. We thought we were going to hunt animals. He finally looked at again. We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong. What do you mean? Leaned forward. His old body seemed to shake slightly, not from cold, from memory. We were not the hunters on Meridian 7. We were the prey, and we did not even know it until it was too late. He closed his eyes. I went to that planet with 30 soldiers under my command. Good soldiers, trained soldiers, my friends. How many came back? Ho asked. Opened his eyes. They were wet now. 7. Only 7 of us walked off that planet, and none of us were ever the same again. He took a deep breath. Would you like to know what happened? Would you like to know what your people did to us in those forests? His heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. Yes, tell me everything. Nodded. Then I will tell you about the Forest of Whispers. I will tell you why I still cannot sleep when it rains. I will tell you what I learned about humans in those terrible days. He looked at her one more time. And then you will understand why we made peace. Not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice. The old veteran settled back in his chair. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and inside the small room, he began to remember the worst days of his very long life. Closed his eyes and let the memories take him back. Back to when his skin was dark gray and strong. Back to when all 4 of his arms worked perfectly. Back to when he still believed the Empire could not lose. The transport ship landed in a clearing on Meridian 7 at dawn, was the first one out. He stood on the soft ground and looked at the forest around him. The trees were tall and green. Strange birds sang in the branches. The air smelled sweet and clean. It was beautiful. His second-in-command, Sergeant, walked up beside him, was older than and had fought in 2 wars before this one. He was careful and smart. He never smiled. The scanners show a human settlement 5 kilometers north, said. Maybe 50 or 60 settlers, farmers mostly. A few guards with basic weapons. Smiled. Then this will be easy. We secure the settlement, capture the humans, and report back to command. We will be heroes before dinner. Did not smile back. I do not like these forests, too many places to hide. Hide from what? Farmers laughed. Relax, the humans are not soldiers. They are soft creatures who grow food and raise children. They will surrender the moment they see us. He gathered his 30 soldiers and gave them their orders. They would march through the forest in a standard formation. 2 scouts in front, the main group in the middle, and 5 soldiers in the back to watch for any surprises. It was simple. It was routine. They entered the forest. For the first hour, nothing happened. They walked through the trees, stepping over roots and pushing through thick plants. The forest was quiet, too quiet, said, but ignored him. Then one of the scouts reported something strange. Commander, there are marks on some of these trees, fresh cuts. Someone has been here recently. Looked at the marks. They were small, almost invisible, just thin lines cut into the bark. They meant nothing to him. Probably the humans marking trails, he said. Keep moving. They walked for another 30 minutes, then stopped suddenly. Where is he? Asked. Looked around. Was one of the soldiers at the back of the group, a young one on his first mission. He should have been right behind them. But he was gone. Spread out, ordered. Find him. They searched the area for 10 minutes. They found his weapon on the ground. They found marks in the dirt where something had been dragged away, but they did not find. Something took him, said. His voice was worried now. Something grabbed him and pulled him away without making a sound, without any of us hearing anything. That is impossible, said, but his confidence was starting to crack. They kept moving. Now everyone was nervous. They held their weapons tight. They watched the trees. They listened for any sound. 2 more soldiers disappeared in the next hour. Same as before. No sound, no struggle, just gone. Only drag marks left behind. "We should go back to the ship," said. "We should call for support." "No," said. He was scared, but he was also stubborn. "We have a mission, we will complete it." They reached a small river and stopped to rest, counted his soldiers. 27 left, 3 gone. He still did not understand what was happening. That was when he saw her. A human woman stood on the other side of the river. She was small compared to her face was covered in green and brown paint. Her clothes were the same colors as the forest. She held no weapon. She just stood there watching them. "Human," one of the soldiers shouted. He raised his weapon to shoot. The woman did not run. She did not hide. She just looked at, and she smiled. Then she disappeared into the trees, gone in a heartbeat, like she was never there at all. After her, ordered. 5 soldiers ran across the river and into the trees, heard them crashing through the plants. Then silence, complete silence. He waited, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. The 5 soldiers did not come back. "Commander," said, his voice was shaking now, "we need to leave now." This time agreed. They turned around and started marching back toward the ship, but the forest seemed different now. The trees looked the same. The paths looked the same, but something had changed. Could feel eyes watching them from the shadows. He could sense movement at the edge of his vision, but whenever he looked there was nothing there. More soldiers disappeared, one by one, always from the back or the sides, always in silence. Sometimes they would find a piece of armor, sometimes they would find blood, but never bodies. Stayed close to, they were both experienced soldiers. They had both survived many battles, but this was different. This was not a battle. This was something worse. "They are not fighting us," said. "They are hunting us. They are taking us apart piece by piece." "How?" demanded. "How can they move so quietly? How can they take armed soldiers without making any sound?" "I do not know," admitted, "but they are doing it." They were halfway back to the ship when it happened, was walking right beside, close enough to touch. One moment he was there. The next moment he was gone. Spun around, he saw something moving in the bushes. He fired his weapon. The plants burst into flames, but there was nothing there. No body, no enemy. And no. The remaining soldiers panicked. They started running in different directions, screamed at them to stay together, but they did not listen. Fear had taken control. Ran, he was not proud of it, but he ran. He could hear screams behind him, some cut short, some lasting longer, but all ending the same way. He burst out of the forest and saw the ship, safety, survival. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. 6 other soldiers made it out with him, only 6 out of 30. They lifted off immediately. As the ship rose into the air, looked down at the forest, and there, standing at the edge of the trees, was the woman with the painted face. She was watching them leave, and she was still smiling. Opened his eyes. He was back in the shelter, back in his old body, back in the present. Was staring at him. Her face was pale. "We never found the others," said quietly. "We sent 3 more units to that forest over the next month. Same thing happened to all of them. We lost over 200 soldiers to a group of humans we never even saw clearly." He looked at the woman with the painted face. We learned later that her name was. She led a group of only 12 humans, 12, against hundreds of trained soldiers. "What happened to her?" Ho asked. "She survived the war. I heard she became a teacher afterward. Can you imagine? The ghost who haunted my nightmares became a teacher of children." Shook his head. "That was when I first understood that we had made a terrible mistake. We thought humans were weak because they were small and soft. We did not understand that weakness can be a weapon, that being hunted for thousands of years taught your species how to hunt back." The old veteran looked out the window again. But the forest of whispers was just the beginning. There were worse things to come, much worse. Gave some time to rest. The memories of Meridian 7 had clearly tired him. His hands were shaking slightly, and his breathing was heavy. Ho brought him some water, which the old accepted with a nod of thanks. After a few minutes, spoke again. 2 years after the Forest of Whispers, I was stationed on an orbital station called. It was a big station, very important to our military. It controlled all the traffic in that sector. Whoever held controlled the region. I have read about said, the battle is famous among humans. We call it the 6-hour war. Made a bitter sound. Yes, 6 hours, that is all it took for everything to fall apart. He settled back in his chair and continued his story. Station was massive. It hung in space like a metal city with thousands of rooms and corridors. Over 2,000 soldiers were stationed there, along with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Commander was in charge. He was a proud officer from an old military family. He had never lost a battle, and he was certain he never would. Was a mid-rank officer by then. He commanded a security section of the station. He had tried to warn about the humans. He had told him about Meridian 7, but had laughed. That was a ground battle in a forest, had said. This is space. This is our territory. Humans cannot sneak through metal walls. They cannot hide in shadows that do not exist. If they come here, we will destroy them. Wanted to believe him, but he could not forget the painted face of watching him from the trees. The human ship appeared on their scanners early one morning. Just one ship, a cruiser, medium-sized, nothing special. It stopped at a safe distance from the station and sent a message. This is Captain One of the Human Defense Force. You are occupying a strategically important position. We request your immediate surrender. You have 1 hour to respond. Laughed so hard that he nearly fell out of his command chair. One ship against 2,000 soldiers and a fortress, he sent a reply. This is Commander of the Empire. We reject your request. Leave now or be destroyed. The human ship did not leave. It also did not attack. It just waited. 1 hour passed. Then the humans sent another message. Your time is up. Prepare for boarding. Boarding, not bombardment, not missiles. Boarding thought it was a joke. Let them try, he said. We will cut them down the moment they step inside. Small craft launched from the human cruiser, 15 of them. Each craft carried 1 human soldier, 15 soldiers total, against 2,000. They attached to the station at different points, far from each other, far from the main defenses. They cut through the hull and entered the station. That was when the lights went out. The entire station went dark. Emergency power should have activated immediately, but it did not. Someone had disabled it. Later, they discovered that one of the human soldiers was an expert in computer systems. She had taken control of the station's power grid in less than 10 minutes. 2,000 soldiers stood in complete darkness. Then the sound started. Screaming, not real screaming, recorded screaming. It came from the speakers all over the station. The sounds of soldiers dying, the sounds of pain and terror, played at full volume in the darkness. Had experienced fear before, in the forest on Meridian 7, but this was different. This was fear by 2,000. Every soldier on the station was panicking. They could not see. They could not communicate. They could only hear screaming and imagine what was coming for them. Stay in formation, shouted to his soldiers. Do not separate, wait for the emergency lights. But many soldiers did not wait. They ran into the corridors trying to find the enemy, and in the darkness they found each other, heard weapons fire, shooting at, friendly fire in the black. Then the humans came. They wore special equipment that let them see in the darkness. They moved through the station like ghosts. One moment a corridor was empty. The next moment 3 soldiers were on the ground, unconscious or dead. The humans did not fight fair. They did not stand and shoot like proper soldiers. They struck from behind, from above, from angles that should have been impossible. Kept his soldiers together. They held a defensive position in one of the cargo bays. They could hear fighting all around them. Explosions, screaming, the real kind of screaming now. Then his communicator crackled. A voice spoke and accented. "This is Captain One. We have captured your command center. Your commander has surrendered. All soldiers are ordered to lay down their weapons." Did not believe it, would never surrender, he was too proud. But then himself came on the communicator. His voice was shaking. "All units, stand down, the station. The station belongs to the humans now." Dropped his weapon. Around him his soldiers did the same. The battle was over. When the lights finally came back on, walked to the command center. He wanted to see what had happened. He wanted to understand. The command center was intact. No damage at all. Stood in the corner, his hands raised. 4 human soldiers guarded him. 4. Just 4 humans had captured the heart of the station. And in the center of the room stood Captain One. She was small, even for a human. She barely reached his chest. Her armor was scratched and dirty. Her face was calm. She looked at as he entered. "You are one of the officers?" she asked in broken. "Yes," said. How did you do this?" One tilted her head. "Do what?" 15 soldiers, only 15, against 2,000, how?" One thought for a moment, then she answered. "Numbers do not win battles. Information wins battles. Psychology wins battles. We knew your systems. We knew your training. We knew that soldiers fight best when they can see the enemy clearly. So we took away your sight. We took away your confidence. We took away your belief that you could win." She almost smiled. After that, taking the station was simple. Stared at her. This tiny creature had conquered a fortress with 14 other soldiers. No army, no fleet, just intelligence and fear. "You are monsters," he whispered. One shook her head. "No, we are survivors. Every species that hunted us learned that lesson. Now your species is learning it too." The humans held the station for 5 days before their reinforcements arrived. They treated the prisoners well. No torture, no cruelty, just efficient professional treatment. When was finally released, he could not sleep for weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the darkness. He heard the screaming in the speakers. He felt the helplessness of standing blind while an enemy moved freely around him. Back in the present, looked at. "It made 2,000 warriors feel like children afraid of the dark," he said. "That was the moment I truly understood what humans were capable of. Not just fighting, not just killing. You could break an enemy without ever letting them see your face. You could conquer a fortress without firing a single shot at its walls." He paused. "Captain One sent me a message after the war ended. She apologized for the fear she caused. She said it was necessary, but she was not proud of it." He shook his head. "I never knew how to respond to that. How do you respond to an apology from the person who taught you the true meaning of terror?" Was quiet for a long moment. "What happened to One?" "She became an admiral later, then a diplomat. She negotiated part of the peace treaty. I saw her picture in the news sometimes. She looked so normal, so ordinary. You would never guess that she once broke an empire's pride with 15 soldiers and a recording of screaming." Took a deep breath. But even was not the worst. The worst came later, on a planet called Prime. That is where I learned that humans do not know how to give up. That is where I learned to be truly afraid. Asked for more water before continuing. Ho brought it quickly. The old veteran drank slowly, his eyes distant. Could see that the next memory was the hardest one. "Prime was a border world," began. "One of our colonies. The humans had pushed deep into our territory by the 3rd year of the war. They wanted Prime because it had rare minerals. We wanted to keep it because losing it would mean losing hope." He set down his water and folded his working hands together. "I was a senior commander by then. I led 10,000 soldiers. We had good defenses, strong positions. When the human force landed, we pushed them back. We trapped them in a valley called the Basin. Mountains on 3 sides, our army on the 4th. No way out." "I remember studying this battle," Ho said. "It is called the Siege of Inhuman History." Siege, yes, that is the right word, nodded. We cut off their supplies, their ships could not land, their reinforcements could not reach them. We had them trapped with no food, no medicine, no ammunition. 4,000 human soldiers with nothing. How long did the siege last? Asked. 18 days. Blinked, 18 days without supplies. That is what I said. 18 days. We expected them to surrender after 3 or 4. Soldiers could last maybe 6 days without proper food before becoming too weak to fight. Humans, we thought, were weaker. We thought they would give up quickly. Shook his head slowly. On the 5th day, they sent a message. They said they would not surrender. They said they would fight until the last soldier fell. We thought it was a bluff, a way to buy time for rescue that would never come. It was not a bluff, said quietly. No, it was not. His voice grew heavier. On the 10th day, we sent scouts to observe them. The scouts reported that the humans were eating plants from the valley, boiling leather from their equipment, catching small animals. They were starving, but they were surviving. On the 14th day, we saw them exercising. Starving soldiers doing physical training in the morning. Our scouts could not believe it, neither could I. On the 18th day, they attacked. Leaned forward. They attacked after 18 days without supplies. They attacked at dawn. 4,000 starving, exhausted humans against our fortified positions, against fresh soldiers with full stomachs and unlimited ammunition. It should have been suicide. It should have been the end. His hands were shaking again. I was at the front line when they came. I wanted to see them surrender. I wanted to watch the end of the siege. Instead, I watched something impossible. They came out of the morning mist like ghosts, thin, weak. Some of them could barely walk, but they were coming, and they were not stopping. We fired at them. Our weapons cut through their lines. Soldiers fell, but the others kept coming. They climbed over their dead friends and kept moving forward. I saw a human sergeant near the front. His name was Boram. I learned his name later. He was hit by plasma fire 3 times. 3 times. The first shot took off part of his shoulder. He kept running. The second shot hit his leg. He kept limping forward. The third shot hit his chest. Paused. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. He kept walking, bleeding, dying, but still walking toward us with his weapon raised. I ordered my soldiers to fall back, not because we were losing. We were winning. We were killing them by the hundreds, but my soldiers were afraid. They had never seen anything like this. Enemies who would not die, who would not stop, who kept coming no matter what we did to them. We retreated to our second line of defense, then our third. The humans kept pushing. Their numbers were getting smaller, but their determination never changed. By midday, the battle was over. The humans had lost half their force, 2,000 dead or wounded, but they had broken through our lines. They had taken the valley entrance, and our soldiers were too shaken to counterattack. Was quiet for a moment. That night I walked through the battlefield. I wanted to understand. I needed to know how they had done it, how they had turned certain defeat into something else. I found wounded humans among the dead. Some of them were still alive, barely. Our medics were treating our own soldiers first. The humans would have to wait. Then I saw something that changed everything. A human medic was moving among the wounded, not human wounded, wounded. She was treating our soldiers, giving them medicine, bandaging their wounds. Her name was, she was just as starving as the others, just as exhausted, but she was helping the enemy. I walked up to her. I asked her why. Why would she help us? We had been trying to kill her for 18 days. We had killed her friends. We were her enemy. Do you know what she said? Shook her head. She said, "You are wounded. Wounded people need help. That is all that matters right now." Wiped his eyes. The memory still affected him, even after all these years. She offered to treat my wounds too. I was not seriously hurt, just small cuts and burns, but she offered anyway. This tiny, starving human woman who had watched us kill her comrades offered to take care of me. I did not understand. I could not understand. How could they fight like demons and then show mercy like angels? How could they starve for 18 days, attack impossible defenses, and then help their enemies? I asked another question. I asked her if she hated us. She thought about it for a moment. Then she said, "I hate what war makes us do, but I do not hate you. You are just soldiers following orders, same as us." That was when I knew the war was lost. Not because we could not kill humans. We could. We did. Thousands of them. But you cannot defeat an enemy like that. You cannot break the spirit of people who will starve for weeks and still fight. You cannot crush the hope of people who will help their enemies after the battle ends. We held Prime for another month. Then we retreated. Not because we ran out of soldiers, because we ran out of soldiers who were willing to fight humans. Looked at with old, tired eyes. They could starve for weeks and still fight. They could hate us and still show kindness. What do you do against that? What strategy works against an enemy who does not think like anyone else in the galaxy? Did not have an answer. After Prime, I started speaking against the war. I told our leaders what I had seen. I told them that we could not win, not because humans were stronger, not because they had better weapons, but because they had something we could not match, some fire inside them that refused to die, some light that darkness could not extinguish. Some people called me a coward, some called me a traitor, but more and more officers started agreeing with me. They had seen the same things I had seen. They had watched humans do impossible things, and they knew, as I knew, that the war had to end. Sighed deeply. The peace talks started 6 months later, and every night during those talks I dreamed of Boram walking toward me with 3 plasma burns in his body. I dreamed of offering to heal me with starving hands. Those dreams still come sometimes, even now, even 40 years later. He looked out the window at the gray sky. But they are not nightmares anymore. They are reminders, reminders of why peace is worth any price, reminders of what happens when you fight an enemy who simply refuses to lose. The rain had stopped. Pale sunlight came through the window of the shelter, falling across white-gray face. He looked very tired now. Telling these stories had taken something from him, but his eyes were clear. He had said what he needed to say. Waited quietly. She knew there was more. There was always more at the end of a story like this. "You want to know why we made peace," said. It was not a question. "You want to know the real reason, not the politics, not the treaties, the real reason." "Yes," said, "I want to know." Nodded slowly. "The war lasted 5 years. 5 years of fighting, 5 years of dying. We had more ships than humans, more soldiers, more resources. We had been an empire for thousands of years. Humans had only left their planet a few centuries ago. By every measure, we should have won." He paused. "We did not win because we could not. Every time we thought we understood humans, you changed. Every time we found a weakness, you turned it into a strength. You were hunted, so you became better hunters. You were surrounded, so you learned to escape. You were starving, so you learned to fight on empty stomachs. You were afraid, so you learned to use fear against your enemies. We won battles, many battles. We killed hundreds of thousands of your soldiers. But for every human we killed, 2 more seemed to take their place. And each one was angrier than the last. Each one had lost friends and family. Each one had a reason to keep fighting. Our soldiers started refusing to fight. Not because they were cowards, because they were wise enough to know that some wars cannot be won. Some enemies cannot be defeated by weapons alone. So we asked for peace. Looked at. But here is the thing that still amazes me even now. When we asked for peace, you gave it to us, just like that. No demands for territory, no calls for punishment, no revenge. You simply said yes. Every prisoner we had taken was returned to us, healthy, well-fed. Some of them had learned human languages while captured. Some had made friends with their guards. Can you imagine making friends with the enemy who locked you in a cell? And the humans we had captured, we had not treated them so well. Some had died. Some had been hurt badly. We expected anger. We expected demands. We expected to pay for what we had done. Instead, the human diplomats said, "The war is over. What happened is in the past. Let us build something better." Shook his head in wonder. That is when I finally understood humans. You are terrifying in war. You fight like no other species in the galaxy. You use fear and darkness and impossible determination to destroy your enemies. But you do not want war. You do not enjoy it. It is a tool to you, not a purpose. What you want is connection. You want friends. You want allies. You want to trade and talk and learn and grow together. The same fire that makes you unstoppable in battle also makes you reach out in peace. You burn too brightly to stay alone. A soft knock came at the door. A young human woman entered, carrying a tray with tea and small cakes. She smiled at warmly. "Time for your afternoon tea," she said in careful. Smiled back. It changed his whole face. For a moment, he did not look like a haunted old veteran. He looked like a grandfather happy to see family. Ho said, "This is Bin. She works at the shelter. She takes care of me." Bin set down the tray and poured tea for everyone. Her movements were gentle and practiced. She had clearly done this many times before. "Bin came here 3 years ago," continued. "A young human woman who wanted to help old veterans, people who had fought against her species, people who had killed her ancestors, people who still wake up screaming from nightmares about humans." "Why?" asked Bin. "Why would you want to do this?" Bin thought for a moment. "Because the war is over. Because these are old soldiers who need care. Because helping people who were once enemies is the best way to make sure the peace stays strong." She smiled. "And because tells the best stories." Laughed, a real laugh, the first one had heard from him. "She makes me tell my war stories to the other veterans," he said. "She says it helps us heal. Maybe she is right. Talking to you today has made me feel lighter somehow." Ben touched his shoulder gently. "I will leave you to finish your interview. The tea will get cold if you wait too long." She left the room quietly, watched her go with warmth in his old eyes. "She reminds me of them," he said softly. "Of in the forest, of one on the station, of on the battlefield, the same spirit, the same fire, but used for healing instead of fighting." He picked up his tea and held it with his two working hands. "You asked me earlier if I regret the war. The answer is complicated. I regret the deaths. I regret the fear. I regret the friends I lost and the things I had to do, but I do not regret the understanding that came from it. Before the war, I thought humans were weak, inferior, animals who had somehow learned to use tools. The war taught me how wrong I was. It taught me that the most dangerous species in the galaxy is also the most compassionate. The most stubborn fighters are also the most eager for peace. The creatures who terrified us in battle now take care of us in our old age." He sipped his tea. "That is the real story of the war. Not the battles or the tactics or the victories and defeats. The real story is what we learned about each other. And what we learned is that we are better together than apart." Ho stopped the recording. The interview was over, but sat still for a moment, thinking about everything she had heard. "Thank you," she said finally. "Thank you for sharing this with us. I know it was not easy." "Nothing worth doing is easy," replied. "But some things are necessary. The young ones need to know. They need to understand why peace matters. They need to hear from those of us who learned the hard way." He looked out the window at the clearing sky. "When I was young, I thought humans were the enemy. Now a human brings me tea every afternoon and calls me grandfather in your language. She does not know about the soldiers I killed. She does not care about the battles I fought. She only sees an old man who needs kindness. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all any of us can ask for. A chance to be more than our worst moments. A chance to find connection instead of conflict. A chance to sit in the quiet afternoon and drink tea with former enemies who have become something like family. And Ho gathered their equipment. At the door, turned back one last time. "Is there anything else you want people to know?" she asked. Considered the question carefully. "Yes, tell them this. The most dangerous species in the galaxy taught me how to find peace. And if peace is possible between us, it is possible between anyone. Never forget that. Never give up on it. Because the alternative is darkness and screaming and endless fear. And no one wants that. Not humans. Not no one." He raised his teacup slightly. "Now go, tell our story. And maybe, if you tell it well, no one will ever have to learn these lessons the way I did. In blood and terror and too many graves." Nodded, she stepped out into the pale sunlight. Behind her in the small room sat quietly by the window. Somewhere in the shelter, Bin was singing a human song as she worked. The sound drifted through the halls, soft and gentle and full of life. The old veteran closed his eyes and listened. And for the first time in 40 years, the memories did not hurt so much. They were still there. They would always be there, but they were softer now, easier to carry. Peace, he had learned, was not the absence of pain. It was the presence of something stronger, something that could hold the pain and still find room for hope. Outside, looked up at the sky. 2 ships passed overhead. One human, flying together toward some shared destination. The war was over. The healing continued. And somewhere in the galaxy, the most dangerous species and their former enemies were learning, slowly and painfully, how to be friends.